Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today I am presenting you my 2020 Senate presidential election prediction for the third week of September, starting on September 19th and going to September 26th. Now, normally I try and be a little bit more energetic in these things, but I have two reasons for not being. One, I'm a little bit congested, and that's never fun, but on the more serious reasoning, this is a rather serious prediction on account of the fact that last night, Justice of the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, passed. And this is a topic which should be handled with some level of seriousness, as opposed to, welcome back to the Election Corner, and we go through all of this stuff. There are many implications of Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying, and we don't know the full extent of how everything's going to go. But I'm going to step you through them, and then we'll do the prediction. So, first off, you are going to be hearing a lot of people coming in saying, oh, well, this is going to spike Republican turnout. They're going to want that Supreme Court seat. And I'm going to tell you that's not going to happen. For three reasons. First, Republicans already have a majority on the Supreme Court. Well, conservatives do. I would say Republicans don't. You can solidly count on Gorsuch and Roberts to vote based on a conservative ideology, but not with the Republican Party line. This has so far stabbed the Republicans in the side multiple times. And frankly, Kavanaugh has also periodically gone off script, but he is more in step with the party line. So, Republicans don't have anything really to gain by this seat besides running up the score. And that's a hard argument to make. Well, Democrats have a lot to lose by losing this seat. Now, they're already talking about if McConnell fills it, they'll abolish the filibuster, which was basically already a dead man walking, but now talks about packing the Supreme Court, which, in my opinion, is a rather inelegant way to do it, but is a solution that could work if the Democrats want to retake control of the Supreme Court. So there's a lot more of a push for the Democrats to win this election than there is for Republicans, just based on pure Supreme Court motivation. Two, this is the first time the justice who passed is a liberal justice. Sorry, lots of pollen in the air. A liberal, so the prior two justices who either resigned or passed were Scalia and Kennedy. They were both conservative justices. Replacing one of them with a liberal justice would have changed the balance of the Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing and replacing her with a conservative replaces her with the, for lack of a better term, it undoes the balance of the Supreme Court as people have seen it. It's supposed to always be a 5-4 split in the minds of a lot of Americans. And lastly, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I would argue, was the most famous Supreme Court justice in the United States outside of Thurgood Marshall in the modern era. She was, frankly, a very memeable person. The notorious RBG is what I'm thinking of, that type of stuff. And so people know who Ruth Bader Ginsburg is. And if you ask your average American, name a Supreme Court justice, they'll say Ginsburg. Her passing has frankly, the copious amounts of disrespect that have already been shown aren't going to work really well in the Republicans' favor because people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they don't like Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. We have this on polling. So those are the three reasons you're not going to see a massive Republican bump, and I'm not going to report one until I actually see it in the polls. But more importantly, there are three things that you need to consider or roughly three things. I might have a fourth thing on here. In general, and we don't know exactly how things are going to go down, but I can give you my best predictions. So first off, will they try and confirm someone? If they do, that's bad news for Republicans, because it means so these are the three. They have to put forward a candidate, 2, they have to vote on the candidate. And 3, the candidate actually has to go through committee. And I'll explain why that one's especially potent to Republicans in a moment. So first, when they have to put forward a candidate, it's a hell of a lot easier to make an argument based on a hypothetical Republican judge as opposed to a actual Republican judge. That's why generic Democrat and generic Republican do so well against incumbents, because a generic whatever can be whoever you imagine. The second you put a person in that slot, it's a hell of a lot harder. Now, will Republicans actually nominate someone? I'm thinking they probably will before the election. However, if it could actually be worse for them if they don't, because Donald Trump so far, in his usual level of tact, has kind of just spitballed people he could put on the court. Remember when he talked about putting Jean Pirro from Fox News on the court? Today, or last night, he spitballed putting Ted Cruz on the court. Putting people who the average American hates. And that's not going to do really well in an election year. You want the American people to be thinking, oh, a generic judge, and that's the advantage Biden has. He doesn't need to make a call on who he's putting on the court. If he was being smart, though, he might put, hint he would put Barack Obama on the court, and that would surely increase Democratic turnout. But, anyway, I won't give too much advice to campaigns right now. Next, the actual vote itself has to happen. Here's how the sausage is made when Republicans have to make votes they know the American people don't agree with. And that's the other thing. They know the American people aren't super pleased with this vote. They were able to cheat Obama out of a judge by, frankly, near sheer luck in how bad Hillary Clinton was. Well, they put in a lot of effort on that, but smearing her for years. But she didn't help herself by any stretch of the imagination. What the Republicans do, they currently have a 54 majority in the Senate. You only need 50 in order to confirm a judge, because the vice president can come in, so they can lose, quote-unquote, 4 seats. What Mitch McConnell does is he passes out hall passes. These are to vulnerable senators who need the coverage because this will do bad things for them. Right now, he has 3 to hand out because Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska who's not running and is probably the most moderate of the Republicans, keep in mind moderate of the Republicans, has already claimed one. Heavy rumors Mitt Romney of Utah is taking one as well. And here's where you have your problem. If he has 3 or if he has 2, Republicans are vulnerable in a lot more states. We'll go into the full details, but we're talking Iowa, Kansas, Montana, North Carolina, Maine. The fact they've already lost Arizona and Colorado in practice doesn't help them. Georgia's in danger. And lastly, South Carolina. And here's why the committee is so important. Lindsey Graham is head of the committee. And Lindsey Graham has this amazing strategy. Genuinely, it was an amazing strategy. It's the same one Mitch McConnell used for a really long time. He's changed his tune as of late. I can say whatever I want because the people in my state aren't paying attention. And in 2018, he did at least one big interview where he said, we'll never confirm someone. We're not going to confirm someone in an election year. No, that even if it's Trump, that'd be hypocritical. See how good the Republicans are because the Democrats lambasted them for this in the lead up to the midterms. Now, Lindsey Graham's on camera. Lindsey Graham's being caught already facing a smear campaign that's calling him a hypocrite by his opponent, Jamie Harrison. And Lindsey Graham is the head of the Judiciary Committee. If he calls anyone, he has to be the one to make the call to vet a Supreme Court justice or potential justice in order to let the entire Senate vote on them. If Lindsey Graham does this, the ads which show him as a massive hypocrite will not only increase, but they'll work a lot better because, like I said, this isn't going to stir Republican turnout. This is going to get more Democrats voting because they might be willing to stack the courts. And I'm not going to make a call, like I said before, whether or not that's a smart move, but it would be an effective move. So Lindsey Graham's in a tough position because now he's also got a challenger who before this 48-48, 45-45, 43-43, tied. Lindsey Graham's in a bad position, and this is going to possibly sink his campaign. And as such, I'll put Lindsey Graham up first. South Carolina is now a toss-up. I don't do toss-ups. I always believe a race is leaning one way or another. It is tilt Republican, and if he calls a vote, I'm willing to move this to tilt Democrat. Next up, let's cover all the rest of the likely states. The Democrats already, I don't do flips as safe seats, so Colorado and Arizona are likely based on how close they are. Not so close they are, and Alabama in the same way. There are 2 more likely seats for the Democrats and 3 more for the Republicans. The Democrats have North Carolina and Maine. Susan Collins and Tom Tillis are the 2 most likely candidates to possibly get hall passes. After Pasa and Joni Ernst would also fall in that category, but they are losing so heavily, and the people in those states are very pissed off about their decisions on the last Supreme Court nominee Donald Trump pushed through. I think this will only hurt them. Next, you have the 2 likely Republican states, Texas and Alaska. Alaska is moving back up just because we don't have good polling out of there. We've seen a strong shift in favor of the independent, but I could see in Alaska voting based on trying to run up the Supreme Court ruling. I need some more polling out of there, but it was one of the few states where we saw polls coming out saying they were heavily undecided and the Supreme Court was important to them. Now, I don't know which direction that moves the Supreme Court in. For all I know, this just made the race tilt and I'm making the wrong call. But for right now, I'm going to assume it's getting more Republican. Texas, likely Republican. I think the numbers are going to remain the same. Cornyn's not super famous. I think if Ted Cruz ends up being the nominee, he won't be. But if for some reason he did, Texas will become a lot more competitive because then the cause of the Republicans is forever the cause of Ted Cruz, and people don't like Ted Cruz. But already you can see the Democrats have 50 seats. They win the presidency. They control the Senate by the slimmest margin. Republicans do have 1 more likely seat. The special election in Georgia, we've been getting more and more likely polling out of various states, and they are saying people are solidifying their views. That's the other reason the Supreme Court won't be as an effective cudgel, because if they were making this call, if the court had been open back in March, they might have been able to make this call, but it wasn't. It's opened less than a month and a half away from Election Day. In practice, we are a month and a week away from Election Day. A little over, a month and a week and a half. Bad news for Republicans. They need time for this to build. They need undecideds. And undecideds aren't going to flip on this issue in their favor, in my opinion. So, your toss-up states are Montana, Kansas, Iowa, Georgia, and South Carolina, but I already made South Carolina. So, first off, we have Montana. Montana is going from leans Republican to tilt Republican. This is for one big reason. The Supreme Court's in play, and that suddenly makes the Montana race a lot more about incumbent versus former governor and COVID. It makes it a lot more of a close race, and Montana voted for a Democrat after he voted against Kavanaugh. By a better margin than he won in his first race. I think Montana goes against the idea that the Supreme Court should be stacked for a single party. As such, that could really undermine Tester's the incumbent Democrat. Daines, the incumbent Republican. It could really undermine him come Election Day. Speaking of which, I know Lisa Murkowski's making a call on, well, I'm the moderate. We'll have to see about what Sullivan does. If we see Sullivan trying to get a hall pass, that means Alaska's a lot more contentious than we first thought. Kansas. Kansas leans Republican. This is due to the fact that the Republican incumbent probably is going to win, or Republican challenger is probably going to win, And also, they're going to be unaffected by this nomination. It's hurting all of the Republicans who are actually in seats. So Montana, Iowa, South Carolina, Georgia, all of these seats are affected because they'll have to vote if a nominee comes up, and they have to make their call. Are they voting? If they say no, people don't show up from their own party. If they say yes, people show up from the opposition party. It's a catch-22 for them. In Iowa leans Republican for right now. We need to get a little bit more polling out of Iowa after this, and I've heard we're going to get some polls right at the end of this month, beginning of next month. So with the Supreme Court in play, we'll have to see how that affects things. Iowa is probably the swingiest of the states outside Florida. And what's going to matter in Iowa is, do the Democrats show up in response to this, or do the Republicans? And lastly, we have Georgia's special election, and that, if it wasn't a tilt before for the Republicans, is definitely a tilt now. Ossoff famously lost Georgia's 2nd District, and the Democrats swept it up in 2018 in response, partially to the Kavanaugh appointment. Yeah. People are forgetting that part of the big motivator in 2018 was Kavanaugh being appointed. And now, honestly, if I had to analyze this map in any level of detail, the map is still bad for Republicans, and they're in a case of damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they push through a nominee, I'm willing to bet, and I might do a more proper map prediction on this, South Carolina, it doesn't become safe Democratic, this is hypothetical, becomes a Democratic, probably leans in favor of the Democrats. Georgia does, Montana does. Alaska, like I said, swingy. It could go the other way and become in favor of the Democrats, or go solid Republican, who knows. Texas could be more in play, but already it's the Democrats running up the score. The real question here is, are the Republicans so self-assured in their own victory that they believe that they won't lose the Senate if they push through a Supreme Court nominee? Because they're not fighting the same Democrats they were fighting back in 2016, whose limp-wristed response to Merrick Garland was, "Oh, please don't. Think of the process." Already, we've had 3 of the most... now, granted, they are some of the progressive senators, but they are pretty powerful. Merkley, who just won his Senate race in Massachusetts, has just, or his primary in Massachusetts, just came out and said, if Republicans in any way try and push someone through, we will expand the Supreme Court and abolish the filibuster. Can you tell my dog wears a bell? The Senate is up for contention. I would argue the Republicans are just seeing how long until they hand it to the Democrats. The House is in the Democrats' hands, and I'm willing to bet the presidency is too. So that's the prediction. If you like the video, leave a like down below or drop a comment. I always like to hear your guys' opinions. If you want to see more from the channel, you can click the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you wish to see more from me outside of the YouTube sphere, I do have a Twitter, at OneManThinkTan1, the Roman numeral, twitter.com, link down in the description, and most importantly, and because I know a lot of my audience tends to be left-leaning, rest up and have a wonderful day.